Hi guys, I decided to record a short tutorial for you on how to work on the piece Ecossaise by Franz Schubert. So first of all, we're going to divide this piece onto first and second halves. So after you found, I'm working on the first half, find the first line and we're going to practice the right hand first. So find your first note, it's going to be B with the third finger. Then you play in legato. Then the next hand position is another 3 notes played 3, 2, 1. And then you're moving down D, B, and D, long D. So when you're playing the first figuration, your hand should go a little bit down and you have to find a good connection with the key and slightly lean on the first note. Thus you will create this accent on the first note, which I know that you're worried about, that your piano will not respond. Just try to find that sound, and I understand that it might not work on the electronic piano. So play this first line around 5 times or until you're absolutely comfortable with it. So we need to find difference in articulation. Accent, legato, accent, legato, staccato, and accented sound, the last note in the phrase. So that's how you practice first 4 measures. Then you are practicing the second half of that first part of the piece. So there is a scale-like movement up from C sharp leading tone to D, and then the last note is D. However, we start with a C sharp, but our last note will be C natural before we go to D. Now practice these first 2 measures, measures 5 and 6, like you practice scale. So very slow, probably saying finger numbers out loud. 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Stop here. Do it a couple of times until you're comfortable and your fingers behaving well. So no movement up and down. Everything is very close to the keyboard. And the trick is to make your first finger to go underneath the rest of the fingers. See how my thumb is already going underneath and I'm crossing it under the rest of my fingers. Now the last measure, 7 and 8. I really want you to try to stretch your hand and play 5, 1, 5, 1, 2. There is no other fingering for this particular moment, but if your hand is too small and you cannot possibly stretch it to cover 2 notes kind of at the same moment and then just slightly move between those notes, then you will have to move a lot between those notes. So just move right, left, and then land on the middle on G. Again, practice this second line at least 5 times or until comfortable. Now we need to look at the left hand. The first half of your piece, first 4 measures, are following directly the harmonic progression that we learned and we know. So we're starting on the triad. This is a tonic triad, 5, 3, and 1. Then we're moving to the second inversion of the C major of subdominant. Then we're going back to the tonic. Now, I want you to not to play those chords too heavy, especially when it's staccato. So it's a little bit lighter sound. You just slightly touch these 3 notes at the same time, but you do not land on it and stay on it heavily. So imagine that your movement is up. You just slightly touch it and you go up, and then land on the chord. Now, there is an important moment. When we move to the second line, there is a little bit of time that you can allow yourself to find the next chord. So if you need to think about this as you have maybe an 8-note rest at the end of the measure to find the next chord, 1 and 2 and then you're finding the next chord, so everything is on time. You're not taking time between last chord of the first line and first chord of the second line. Now this is moment that you need to practice to find these two chords as fast as possible. So you're starting, this is your tonic in a first note inversion in a root position, and then you stretch your hand to cover D, F sharp and C. And I insist you're playing it with 5, 3 and 1 in the left hand. Then everything is a little bit slightly easier from that moment, because at least you're maintaining the same hand position when you're finding the second inversion of the tonic, 5, 2 and 1. Then again this 5-7 chord in a root position, and it's fully presented. We're skipping the A, but we have the rest of the notes most important for that chord, D, F sharp and C. So you repeat it and you go back to tonic, 2 and 1. Now after you worked on these elements, so you played left hand at least 5 times, you found the comfort with the switching between chords in the left hand. I want you to try to put 2 hands together. So my metronome at first is going to be 100, and it's going to be 100 for 8 note, for 1 8 note. So it is on a slower side. If you need slower tempo, please go ahead and practice it slower. And ready, go. Remember that I want you to repeat the same music material from the beginning when you're performing it at the exam. Also very important to find the dynamic difference in between first half of the phrase and the second half. I understand that you guys are going to use electronic pianos mostly, but even on your electronic piano you can apply a little bit more pressure on the note, so I can at least see that in the second half of this piece, you're doing exactly the same thing. You're breaking your task into smaller tasks, right? Into smaller element. So first line of the second half of that piece, starting with this wide stretch in the right hand. And it's a sequence, so you'll have to stretch your hand quite a bit. So again, I would love you to try to cover both notes kind of at the same time, and then just slightly rock between 2 notes, and then find the next measure and the G with the 4th finger, and then 2, 1. So this is the full chord. It's E minor, but it's in the second inversion and with the 5th of that chord on the top and on the bottom. So you're finding it like this. The next chord, since it's the sequence, I want you to play exactly same fingering. So this is a dominant chord. We're going back to G major. So this is a dominant in the second inversion. Now, if you absolutely cannot do 4 in the second measure, you can try to do 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 3, 1. But this is much worse. So unless it's your only option, please try 5, 1, 5, 1, 4, 1, 2, 1. So play this right hand until you're comfortable. Well, what else you can do to make your hand comfortable finding all these notes? You can play with the dotted rhythm. Then you revert the dotted rhythm and you do You did it a couple of times. Come back to the regular rhythm and play it comfortably in your own tempo. Then in the left hand, again, at the end of the phrase, we will have to take a little bit more time. So we're going to shorten this note. It's going to be a quarter and a half. Imagine that you have a rest, 8-note rest at the end of the piece. So once you find your tritone and resolution, that's the first part of the sequence, then second tritone, resolution. So it's 1 and 2, and you're using this 8-note rest for you to cover this distance between this third and the root positions 5/7 chord on the next line. So one more time. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and you find in the next chord. Then your last line is exactly the same as your second line, so you already covered that. Now again, once you're comfortable with hands separately, you put your metronome in a slow tempo and you try to do everything that's written in the score, including dynamic and of course right fingering and right notes, starting with this second half. Stop and work one more time through that entire line. It's important not to forget to lean a little bit more on your first note in both hands, because unlike the first line, you have sforzando and it's applied to both hands. Now I told you that your tempo is probably going to be somewhere between 132 and 156. So I'm going to set up my metronome on the, well, let's say 144 maybe. So this is 1 beat per quarter note. 1, 2, ready, go. So in order to achieve this fast tempo, you will have to gradually increase the tempo, starting from the slow tempo that you're working on your elements, and then increasing it for every line. So start in 100 per 1 8-note, then move it 120 per 8-note, 132 per 8-note. Increase it slowly, but do it very consistently and achieve this fast tempo. Okay, good luck guys. I hope you enjoy working on that piece. Bye bye.